Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining on this webinar. So this is again one of the sessions around IP knowledge concerning PAVA systems, PRAESENSA of Bosch. Yeah, this is again one of the sessions that is part of a bigger series, all concerning IP. So we already went through the introduction, the basics, IP audio connections, RSTP hop counts, real-time audio, and now we are looking at security arrangements that are relevant of transporting audio over IP networks. So the objective is that we give you more insights into security arrangements for PRAESENSA on an IP platform. And the topics that we will run through are mainly security precautions, data security, and configuration of such. So today, Anton Thiele is with me again, and he will run us through these topics.
Okay, yeah, Maarten, thank you for this introduction. Yes, yeah, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining this webinar about security precautions and arrangements within PRAESENSA. So let's start with these precautions. These are is a little bit of theory, which is also mentioned in a specific application note for PRAESENSA, but are important. Is an important list which I want to bring under your attention. This is then some things related to network security and system access. Because PRAESENSA is an IP connected and networked public address and voice alarm system. So we need to be sure that things are secure here. So special attention and measures are required during installation and operation, and this to avoid the tampering of the system. That someone could access it and disturb operation. Many of such measures are provided in the PRAESENSA configuration and installation manual. You can look back there, all the aspects. So follow the installation instructions with respect to the location of equipment and the permitted access levels. So there is a chapter on location of racks and enclosures describing this. So bringing things really after a secured area is one of the first important security arrangements which you can do for equipment. Make sure that critical call stations and operator panels that are configured for alarm functions only have restricted access using a special procedure. So that could be mounted in an enclosure with a lockable door, or by configuring of user authentication on the device. This last thing is expected to become available in the 1.70 release, which is expected to be here at the end of this year. So then you can really lock your call station, as you can see at the right side. This is currently not yet available, but you could, in this case, still be sure that your call stations and operator panels are configured for important features have restricted access. So ensure that they are behind an enclosure by a lockable door, or keep this in mind. It is highly recommended also to operate PRAESENSA on its own dedicated network, so not mixed with other equipment for other purposes. Other equipment may be accessible by unauthorized people, and that could cause a security risk. And this is especially true if the network is connected to the internet. So be sure that, and that's not different from your office building, but you must have the right security arrangement set before to access the internet, and that someone from outside could get access to the PRAESENSA system, which is an evac system. It is furthermore highly recommended that unused ports of network switches are locked or lockable or disabled to avoid the possibility that equipment is connected that may compromise the system. And so this is also the case, for example, for PRAESENSA call stations that are connected via a single network cable. And the other port of that switch could then also be accessible. There is already an an how do you call it, enclosure at the outside, so that you cannot directly access it, but you could also have such kind of covers put into the device that you are sure that no one else can directly enter the device. So that's just an additional security aspect which you could consider. Yeah. Other PRAESENSA equipment should be installed in an area that is only accessible by authorized people to avoid tampering. Yeah. And use an intrusion protect system with port security where possible to monitor the network for malicious activity of policy violations. Yeah, this is something which you could do, for example, with the Advantech switch, the ES8P2S, which we also offer within the EN54 certified solution, or with the Cisco i5000, which is the EN54 certified layer 3 switch. But also, if you have any other switch, you can have these kind of protection mechanisms to assure that everything what is connected to that switch is, in that case, protected, yeah, and being detected. Yeah, PRAESENSA itself is using Omnio for its network connections. And that means that all control and audio data exchange is using encryption and authentications. Yeah. So, yeah, but the system controller also allows the configuration of unsecured DANTE and AS67 audio connections as an extension of the system. So you can standard unsecured DANTE connect to your PRAESENSA system. Yeah, both it could be an input and an output of that that could be a DANTE unencrypted stream. So these connections are not authenticated and not encrypted. So they form a security risk as no precautions are taken against malicious or accidental attacks through their network interfaces. So you could, yeah, you can imagine if you would have insecure DANTE, which is maybe background music, and yeah, if someone would break in the network and would change the audio stream of that music into an evacuation, it could create panic in a building. So that kind of things had to avoid that someone is changing your audio. Yeah, then you could consider to say for higher security that these devices should not be used as part of the PRAESENSA system. And yeah, if such inputs and outputs are needed, yeah, at least use unicast connection, so point-to-point connection in that case. And yeah, also consider to use the Omnio to DANTE gateway to isolate a PRAESENSA network from an external DANTE or AS67 audio. So this is the backside of this gateway, where you have yeah, really two separate networks. So that means the Omnio network is really isolated from the DANTE network. They are not connected through IP. So and there you could then create some kind of isolation to ensure that the DANTE clients cannot directly intrude into the Omnio network. Yeah, for security reasons, by default, the ES8P2S, this Advantech switch, is not accessible from the internet. Yeah, so when the default link local address is changed to an address outside the link local range, then also the default password must be changed. So there is a default published password to access this device for the first time. And yeah, if you so it is recommended to change that password and also the IP address for the management of that switch. So refer to the installation manual to change these passwords and management IP addresses of these switches. And for SNMP, this can be used, for example, with the Bosch network analysis tool, Omnio Docent. Then always use SNMP version 3. which provides a much better security and authentication and privacy. So that is an encrypted way of doing your network management. And this is also mandatory even for if you want the PRAESENSA system itself. So the system controller can also connect via SNMP to these ES8P2S switch, which was mentioned on top, to monitor that device. And that's also done through SNMP version 3. So also from that perspective, it's always use always version 3 and not 2 or 1, which are not which are not safe, let's say it that way. Then the system controller web server is using HTTPS, so with encryption. So the web server in the system controller uses a self-signed security certificate. And when you access the server via this web page, you will then see the secure connection failed error or warning dialog, indicating that the certificate was signed with an unknown authority. And that is expected. And to avoid this message in the future, you have to create an exception in the browser. So you need the first time you access the system controller through this page, you get a warning that, and then you need to save that. It's just to avoid this message. Yeah, in the future you have then to create that exception and that you accept to connect through this web server. And then make sure that new user accounts for system configuration access using sufficient long and complex passwords. And so the username must have something between 5 and 64 characters. The password must be between 4 and 64. So it is the responsibility of the configurator to define the proper sufficient long and complex passwords. So there is not a method to say you have now to do this because this is not direct end user login. So for a PC, you like when you create your password in a PC, you would indeed have the defined script for that. In this case, it is really up to the responsibility of the configurator to use these long and complex passwords. This is not different from any high-level switch even. So because at the end, it's the configurator responsibility to set up a secure system. Yeah. The PRAESENSA system controller provides an open interface for external control, and access via this interface also requires the same user accounts as for the system configuration access. So in addition, the system controller generates a certificate to set up the TLS, secure connection between the system controller and the open interface client. So that means that also when you have a third-party system, which is then having the open interface, that's our API, our application processing interface to do external control, that can be done encrypted. One thing here to mention is also, if, for example, if you have a logging server or an external device, which you do not want to make any changes into the PRAESENSA configuration, just then configure an account in PRAESENSA in the system controller, which cannot do this. So it's just a user, and then also give that user account to this third party to interface with PRAESENSA. Yeah, and in that case, don't give him an admin account where he could also make changes in the configuration. No, only then give him the user account to be able to see the logs, for example. Yeah, so or to make a call, but not to make changes in the configuration. So with that respect, you can also yeah, further make your system safe. Yeah, you can download the certificate for the open interface and to activate it on the client PC. So you can, for this, I would refer to the system security chapter of the PRAESENSA configuration manual. So you can download these certificates and then they can then be used to connect in a secure way to the system controller. Some more. So the system access to the devices of the system is secured. I in the beginning mentioned it via Omnio, and that is using a security username and a passphrase. And the system uses a self-generated username and a long passphrase for that. So this can be changed in the configuration. And for trainings, normally we do this also. We make it then a little bit more easy. But in the real installation, I would recommend to use that self-generated username and passphrase, and then store that on a safe location that you always have the ability to use these also for example, the firmware upload tool, which needs it, and also this Omnio Docent network management tool, which needs it. So if you want to directly access the devices, they will need that pre-shared key, so this PSK and passphrase to access the devices. So in case a PC for event logs is used, like it presents a logging server and viewer, make sure that the PC is not accessible by unauthorized persons. So that's also a thing when you have third-party applications connecting to the network and to the system, which may contain like usernames or passwords. Then be sure that they are also protected against unauthorized persons. Yeah. So these are the major security rules which are mentioned in the in a separate application note for Praesensa. When you look at the Omnio security, let's zoom a little bit more into that part. So that's Omnio is then the way how the system controller communicates with the other Praesensa devices and also the Praesensa devices with each other. So, and this communication is all encrypted against eavesdropping and interception. And that means that, you cannot hear or see or tap more or less what is on the network, and you cannot pretend something here. Like here in this example where you have a victim which wants to connect to a trusted host, the victim 222 wants to connect to that trusted host 333, and then someone pretends as if this he is the source of 333, so that he's replying to this request of this victim. So then he pretends as being that source 333, and then he might be able to get secure data. That kind of principles. If your IP connection is not secure, could happen. So that they maybe then they overload this one with a lot of traffic, so it cannot respond, and then it can just act as being the trusted host for this victim. So be careful with that, and that's something which also Omnio then in this case protects. Yeah. So and this hijacking that you have a man in the middle, like a fisher, which is then more or less pretending in that case as the and can capture all the traffic which is coming in between. Yeah. So these kind of things secure Omnia will help you in protecting for these kind of attacks. There are two types of security. The first one is the control data security, and that is an encryption and authentication of the control data. So the TCP, the standard control data. And that's done in software. So that means that it is a little bit slower. It's not in an FPGA or something. So no, it's really on software. And but that's much quick enough to do your encryption for control data. So, but it cannot be applicable for real-time audio. And for this audio data itself, there we need to do the encryption and authentication in hardware. So for that we have an FPGA which really does the encrypt the audio streams. So how does it look like? I have here an example. I have at the left side, I have the system controller. At the right side, I have an amplifier, and in the middle, a call station. And I start setting up the system with an encrypted channel setup. So I want to make an communication, an encrypted communication channel between the different components. So that means at the first time when you add an amplifier, in this case, to the PRAESENSA configuration, so then in that moment, the system controller will send a pre-shared key to that amplifier. So you have, when you do a first configuration, a first setup of the PRAESENSA system controller, then that will be configured with that PSK, with that pre-shared key. And at the first time, it's using a default key to reach the amplifier, and it's sending then this new key to the amplifier. And then this new key, this new pre-shared key, will be stored into this amplifier, and then you know you have always the encrypt and decrypt of your control fully secure. Yeah. The same is when you add the call station to the configuration. So it's using the default key, the default PSK, which we have from the factory. And the first time you connect your call station, it will then use that new pre-shared key, and when it's received, it will add. When it is added to the configuration, then the next time it will communicate through that pre-shared key. So every further control data is then fully encrypted with this new pre-shared key. Yeah. When you then want to start a call, when you want to make a call through that call station, then the system controller will use that control pre-shared key to send an AES-128 encrypted key to that call station to be able to decrypt the audio. So that means that also for the audio, this XYZ is then the audio encryption key, which is sent over that secure AES, that AES-128 key for audio is sent over the PSK, so over this TLS control key, to be able for this call station to decrypt the audio. Yeah, so that means that also this key is then secured, received at that call station, and in that case it can be decrypted. Yeah. So that means then, so when at the moment it has received this YZ key, it can use that key to send the encrypted Dante audio from this device up to the amplifier. Of course, then the amplifier must also know that key to be able to decrypt it. So that again is then managed from the system controller, send the key over this secured control TLS 1.2 control key. And then this XYZ is here to decrypt the audio. And so that means in that case, you also have then a full secure audio path. Yeah? And for a next call, even for the next call, another AES key will be distributed and used. So every time you create a new call, another audio key is sent. So every audio channel in your system will have its own audio key. Yeah. So a little bit again on the network control data security. So we are using that TCP OCA control in software via this TLS. And we are using that pre-shared key, that PSK, where I talked about. And so the PSK has to be presented on the device before it is possible to start that secure connection. And for Omnio is using then this Diffie-Hellman key exchange method. So this is something which sometimes consultants are asking for. What type of key exchange is there? That's the Diffie-Hellman method. So that means the connection set up with the factory default key, as mentioned before, and this is also preferably on a closed network. So when you do your configuration of your system, it is recommended to do that on a closed network so that you are sure that no externals can access it, because you are using a factory default key at the first moment to share the new pre-shared key. Yeah. So this PSK is then next stored persistently on the device, and in case the key is lost, the device must be reset to factory defaults by pressing a manual reset switch. So that means that PSK, which is in the system controller generated, and you for some reason lose that device, maybe if, for example, if the system controller would be broken and you do not have made a proper backup of your configuration, and you need to have another system controller installed, that means, and you do not have saved anywhere this pre-shared key, then you really need to reset all your devices manually in the field. So if you have a large system, that's pretty a large work. It's a lot of work to reset all these devices. And so it's very important that you have a backup of your system controller configuration, which has this pre-shared key in it. Yeah. So or have this pre-shared key itself stored, or have the configuration stored, but be sure that you have that somewhere on a safe location and is always available in case you need to do a replacement. Yeah. So in case the key is lost, then these devices must be set to factory defaults by pressing the manual reset switch. Yeah, this a little bit more on that this cipher suit is used. So this is the TLS, I don't mention here, this all, but this is a particular number which is published. So it's not a secret. This is the way how we do our encryption. Yeah. So, and this is then in 128 AS in cipher feedback mode. So just for the secure experts who want to exactly know what type of audio security we are using here. Proprietary implementation of standards-based algorithm for encryption and authentication. Yeah, we have low latency requirements, but this encryption only adds 0.1 milliseconds additional sample delay for encoding and decoding. So it's, yeah, what I already said, it is managed in hardware, so it goes very quick. Yeah, so this is actually, if you look at our standard network latency, which we have set in PRAESENSA, currently is 10 milliseconds. So then only 0.1 milliseconds is part of the used by the sample delay for the encoding and decoding of this by this algorithm. Yeah. So the key of this audio is lost after a power cycle, and so it must be distributed via a secure control connection. So that's what we have already in place. The secure connection is there, of course, also after a power cycle, and at the moment that you again re-establish your call, then after the power cycle, then this audio key is automatically be distributed again to the different receivers which need it, the amplifiers which need to decode it. Yeah. So each audio link has a different key, as already mentioned. Yeah, other security measures in PRAESENSA. So that's more about the system controller itself. Yeah, we have the system controller stores and exchanges passwords with the open interface API clients using the SHA-2 secure hash algorithm. So that's the version SHA-256. in that case, which is being used to secure these. And the configuration and message backup is possible over an authenticated secure connection, the HTTPS, and that's in this case the TLS 1.2, which is being used. The configuration itself, how would that look like? Well, if you look at the PRAESENSA configuration, username and passwords, that must be set up by the first time by the user at the first action. So that means the first moment you connect to the system controller, you need to set up a username and password. And this is an example of a very insecure password. So always in a real installation, change these usernames and passwords to a complex, to complex names. And this is also not default, so you really have to type in your own username and password, and that's after factory defaults the case. So then you see the screen for once. And yeah, if you do not have a username and password, there will be no access to the configuration pages. So you can only then again reset to factory defaults, and you need then to create your new username and passwords, and you have to load a new configuration into the device. So always have the proper backups. There is also a security chapter in the configuration, which contains the Omnio username and passphrase. And in this case, this username and passphrase is something which is more secure, as you can see here, with a lot of numbers in it. That is auto-generated, so you can just by clicking you can create a new number. It's like a random generated username and passphrase, which you can then use to secure your system. And for example, for the firmware upload tool, this is needed, and also for this Omnio docent tool, it is mandatory to have these username and passphrases in place. So for audio and OCA encryption, it is used. I already explained this, the entire procedure, where we're using these pre-shared keys, and it is automatically generated. But you can also, you can by the user also configure this. But then also be careful not to use the default username and passphrases, because that makes your system insecure. Change these to real, these kind of complex username and passphrases. If you do not have these Omnio username and passphrases available, you cannot have encrypted audio and control. So it's really, so the system controller must know them to be able to share these to the different components. And when you lost the username and passwords or the passphrase, then you need to reset your devices back to factory defaults. So this is the backdraft of having a secure system. If you lose these secure parameters, you really lost the control of the system. So it's important that you have this saved on a safe location. One thing left is the open interface fingerprints. So this is the secure connection for your third-party system, which is connected through open interface to PRAESENSA, because for the ones who know, our open interface provides full control. It's one of the most well documented APIs, open interface documents, which are currently available in the market, and you can via this open interface do full control of PRAESENSA. So you can really do everything with it. So it's important also here, if you give third parties access through open interface, that this can be done through a secure connection. And also here in the system controller config pages, there is a fingerprint available which can then be used by this third-party system to, this certificate can be used to securely access the system. Another thing is in security arrangements title is the option to restrict access. So that means in this case, you can, through this checkbox here, allow access by non-secured system clients. Yeah, so that's something which can be done here. And then you can configure which IP addresses of third-party systems are allowed to access the system controller. Yeah, so you can really by IP address also allow only access by configured system clients. I must say, I say it wrong. So allow access by non-configured system clients. So this one must be unchecked to that you can say only configured system clients may access the system. Yeah, so that's something which where you can play with to also make your system more secure.
Okay, then Anton, thank you for presenting, and Peter for supporting, for all participating. Thank you all for your attention. And then we hope to see you on the next session, which will be the last one in this IP series. And then we wrap it up, and we hope that we were able to educate your knowledge level on the IP topic for PRAESENSA. Thank you very much, and have a great remainder of the day.